Good morning, everybody, and welcome to your Rangers Review morning briefing. It is Thursday, the 9th of January. It is game day. Rangers Thursdays are back. Rangers heading up to Dens Park to take on Dundee tonight. We'll have all the coverage from the game to come your way. Chris Jack is heading up the road for us. So let's hope it's not a wasted trip, as a few journeys last season were for him. But Joshua joins me to discuss all things Rangers, and there is plenty to talk about following the press conference yesterday. How's it going, Joshua?
Yeah, going good. I don't know why I never seem to go to the Dundee away games, but Chris had about 4 trips last year, didn't he? And there was how many games were suspended? Was it 2 games?
I think it was suspended. Two, I think.
But Rangers were up on 3 occasions. So I tell you what, it is cold. So let's hope that there's no repeat.
Yeah, let's hope that the old covers are on at Dens Park. And if you are heading up there tonight, folks, then do wrap up warm, because it's an old chilly one outside. Right, let's talk all things Rangers, and we'll talk transfers, because, of course, we are now just a little over a week into the transfer window. Still no incomings as yet, but a bit of noise with regards to departures. Robbie Fraser has already left to join Livingston on loan for the remainder of the season. And Cole McKinnon has departed for a fellow Championship side Ayr United on loan for the remainder of the campaign. A Rangers statement says we can today confirm Cole McKinnon has joined Ayr United on loan for the remainder of the season. Everyone at the club wishes Cole well during his loan spell. So he's off to get more games with the honest men, as they are known. Good move, that, Joshua, sending them out. I've said it before. I think it's important, these young lads, if they're not getting much game time for the first team or any game time, they should be playing elsewhere.
Yeah, we had about a month ago, maybe not a month ago, but a little bit of time ago on the site, an update on the futures of Alex Lowry and Adam Devine, and someone like Cole McKinnon kind of falls into that bracket as well, being a player who's too old really for the B team. He's done that, and we know about the kind of Scottish-wide, the lack of infrastructure at B team level, and that's a whole other discussion which we won't get into today. But for the stage of his career that he's at, he was part of the squad a fair amount last season, not really been able to break in this season. He's done well, obviously, when he played for the B team. I think he scored in the recent cup final. It didn't make sense for him to go and get minutes for his sake as much as anyone else's. I think Robbie Fraser is a player who there's a potential there that he could still push his way into plans or be a backup or be in consideration. And Clement spoke about that last night in his press conference, and saying that he might regret it at moments allowing him to go on loan, because you look at a game like tonight and Rangers don't have, if Jeffrey was to go off injured, Redvan's at right back, there's not an abundance of options across the back line. But makes sense for him as well, I think, for the stage of his career he is at. And Cole McKinnon the same. He's obviously been on loan in the Championship before, started well at Partick Thistle, kind of tailed off, and you'd imagine that, for him it's a big 4 or 5 months, because he was involved in the first team quite a lot towards the tail end of last season, came on away at Benfica. Remember, he came off the bench away at Hibs. He's obviously scored for Rangers a couple of years ago as well, but he's not going to look into that midfield at the moment. And then, as such, I think a loan deal makes sense.
Yeah, he had a previous loan at Partick Thistle. Don't think it went entirely to plan for him. So hopefully this works well for him. Stephen, with a point, quite rightly says, hardly young lads now, Derek. Need to move on these guys if they're in their 20s and haven't broken into the first team. Yep, it's an important loan for both Fraser and McKinnon. The manager did touch on Robbie Fraser in his embargoed section of the press conference yesterday, which I thought was interesting, saying that he may live to regret that decision to send him out on loan, but he wasn't getting much of a look in with Ridvan and Jefty ahead of him in the pecking order. But he says it's for the sake of their careers, they have to be out there playing football. So let's see what these loans bring, if they can get game time, if they can impress, and if they can return to Rangers better players and start challenging properly for first team places. One player who is in the first team, Joshua, who's been linked with a move away, is Cyriel Dessers. According to the Italian football journalist by the name of Rudy Galletti, he tweeted yesterday that Cagliari are renewing their interest in Dessers after previous attempts made in recent years. The club are currently evaluating whether to take concrete steps soon. It's also believed that he's followed by other European clubs and is considered transferable by Rangers. So that is what he had to say. I think it's no secret that Rangers, I think, would be quite easy to deal with if a club was to come in with some cash for Cyriel Dessers. And certainly, by all accounts, he did well over in Italy before when Rangers bought him from Cremonese, and it looks like he's got a potential suitor over there.
Well, he's someone who I don't know how many times he's moved in his career, but quite a lot. And obviously,
Yes.
if you look at the issue of the 2023 window for Rangers, it's that they signed too many players of a certain age. They're more difficult to move on after a certain age because clubs want, as you see with Rangers now, they want a resale value. I think the average age of player Rangers signed this summer was 23.5 or something like that. And that's considering Robin Proper and Liam Kelly, who are 31, and Kelly's, I don't know, late 20s at least. So Dessers, I think you're right to say that, Derek, that the situation is different for the summer. Rangers did have a concrete bid for Dessers in the summer. He also wanted to stay. That was from Atalanta. Atlanta, sorry. Yeah, the situation, I always get confused before those two. Between those
Easily done.
The situation now is different because he's a third choice striker. He's rarely started games. The last time he started a game was away at Motherwell, but he does still retain the sell-on value because he's scored goals kind of wherever he's gone. And obviously that Feyenoord spell was the best of his career. But if you're looking at only the numbers of Dessers' time at Rangers, and if you're looking at only, I don't know, goal scored per 90, whatever it may be, while the story of his tenure has not just been that, he does have sell-on value. So I agree with you. Rangers would not be hard to deal with if they can get the right offer in for him. He's had interest in the summer window that extended just beyond the bid that came in for the player. And again, that's not a surprise when you look at his career and the frequency with which he has moved. I think he's someone who's enjoyed living in Glasgow and he's settled in Glasgow, but he's 29 now, going on 30, or he's just turned 30. He'll want to play football as well, and he'll look at the pecking order at the moment and know that there's certainly a first choice striker at the moment, and it's Hamza Igamane, and Danilo is second and very much challenging ahead of him at the moment.
Yeah, he's turned 30 last month. This is my issue. The sniper brings it up. He says, we must bring in another striker if Dessers leaves. We can't leave ourselves short up top. I'd imagine Rangers would be looking to strengthen if Dessers leaves. Josh, I know that the priority at the moment is centre-back, but you can't be going into the second half of the season with Danilo, who's had, as we all know, injury issues, and Hamza Igamane.
Yeah, if you were to press me now on what I think will happen, if there's no movement and if there's no incomings and outgoings, I would still expect Rangers to get a centre back over the line, but more of a short term deal, whether that be a loan till the end of the season, something to kind of plug that gap. Obviously, Cass and Weirjo is most likely not going to play between now and the end of the season. You'd be effectively replacing his role in the squad. If they can get money in for Dessers, obviously there's still gaps to plug elsewhere, and as everyone knows, Rangers do not have an abundance of transfer money to spend, and they've had to, like with Hamza Igamane, they've had to find deals that are smart and that can tick that box of affordable, able to contribute now, maybe come from a different market, but also have that sell-on value down the line, which the whole point of fixing a player trading model is you need to get some value in your squads. There's no doubt that looking at Rangers' makeup of centre-backs, that's an area that needs a signing in it's easy to say now, but a signing in the mould of Hamza Igamane, someone who is young, who has sell-on value, who can contribute now. Obviously, the pursuit of Jose Cordoba at the start of summer, which, as we reported in the summer, that was more of a breakdown, even though the transfer was agreed, and a feeling from Rangers' point of view that the player maybe wasn't totally bought into the project, which is an important consideration in their transfer model. But that's a recognition of the fact that you do need maybe a younger centre-back next to someone like John Souttar, who is injured at the moment, but generally has played the majority of football available in the year prior. So that's how I would see the transfer business as things stand. But if you get money in for Dessers, then you free yourself up to do a little bit more business and perhaps if an opportunity arises, because January is more about that. If an opportunity arises to strengthen the squad, and Rangers need that, whether it be in the defence, whether it be long term, or as you say, if Dessers was to go in the attacking areas as well, because Danilo, you can see with the minutes that Danilo's playing, Derek, he's still being kind of carefully brought up to speed, and he's not someone that they think at the moment can go 90 minutes, and you don't want to get into a position like you did at the start of the season where you only had one fit player in that position when it was Cyriel Dessers, and when he did generally for the first month or so of the season start pretty well.
Yep. There's a point here from Bobby, says, give Lovelace a try, Deke. He has scored. Yeah. He scored, of course, against Celtic a couple of days ago in that behind closed doors Glasgow Cup game. Scored the third goal in a 3-1 win. I'd imagine he'll be knocking on the door, Zach Lovelace. This is my thing. I think there'll be strikers out there that would, even if it's just a short-term signing until the end of the season, someone just to come in and be that third choice, just to maybe come off the bench to end games or what have you. If Lovelace could be the answer. We know that the manager spoke highly of him earlier in the season when he just prior to the FCSB game, wasn't it? And he get brought on for a little bit of that match. So
he's just had bad injury issues, Derek, and he's still only 18, Zach Lovelace, I think, which shows you. If I kind of feel like he's been around for a long time, and again, he's someone who's been unfortunate, because you remember that when Stephen Davis brought Ross McCausland into the Rangers first team for the game against, it was Aris away from home, wasn't it? And then an away game against St Mirren as well. Lovelace started away at St Mirren, I think, if memory serves me, and
yes, he did.
With I think a hamstring tear or something that kept him out for a concerted period of time after. Again, he's someone who I don't think he could do with playing more regular competitive football than what is on offer at the moment. We'll maybe come on to talk about that in relation to Bailey Rice, but he also, the unfortunate thing for him has been when opportunities have presented themselves, he's picked up these injuries, but he is someone that the club have been excited about for a long time. It's just not, for whatever reason, whether that be managerial change, slowing things up, all the disruption that's happened off the pitch, all these things impact the smoothness of a player pathway into the first team too.
Yep. Timothy taking issue on short-term signings. He says, why do we need short-term signings? Waste of money. I'm just thinking about the Europa League. If Rangers go deep in that competition, which they could well do, given previous times in the competition. Danilo wasn't part of the European squad. I would imagine he will be added as soon as Rangers progress out that group stage. And I would just like another striker in there. You don't have to break the bank, just someone that will do a ton for you, perhaps, to give some of the players a bit of a breather if the games are coming thick and fast. But that's just my shout. On the issue of centre-backs, and I've seen this, and I think it's a valid one, about whether Rangers should bring in, Johnny Evans has been mooted before Joshua, whether Rangers should be spending cash on someone like that, given that the league is... they're not in the title race, Rangers, and they're more likely than not just going to sort of comfortably get second place. And do you think that's a fair argument? Why should they spend a bit of cash there? Should they just be looking at perhaps pre-contracts or looking at permanent signings for next season?
Yeah, you look at, not to keep going back to Hamza Igamane, but I think alongside a couple of other players, and obviously player stocks kind of go up and down with Rangers form at the moment, understandably so. You look at someone like Diamande, who showed, I think, what he can do in that Celtic game, and then against Hibs made a couple of errors. We've obviously spoken a lot about away form, and I think quite often the lack of control is about the style overall and not so much individuals. But Igamane is an example of Rangers recruiting in new ways, finding new markets, finding better values, all the things that have been spoken about. Now, repeating that and doing it again and again is difficult, but I think with a transfer strategy like the one they have, or when you're trying to fix a player trading model, you've got to commit to it. Look at Leon King tonight, and we've made this example before. Leon Balogun was released by Rangers 3 seasons ago to create a pathway for Leon King, who went and played all these minutes in the Champions League. He had an injury at the start of Michael Beale's full pre-season, and Leon Balogun was brought back. Now, taking away the 2 players in isolation, that I think encapsulates one of Rangers' big issues in recent years. Different managers made those decisions. There was a sporting director in place for the first part of that decision and not the second part of the decision. That sporting director should obviously have the protect the kind of long-term interests of the club and not just the short-term results. For anything to work, for any transfer strategy to work, you need to have you need to give it time, and you need to trust it over time, and you need to also sometimes not make decisions. For example, Nico Raskin in certain games, is he still, I think, improving as a number 6? Yes, but he's definitely been in the best run of his Rangers career in that position. If Rangers had managed to get a loan signing over the line in that position, where would he be? Where would his value be? If Rangers got a loan signing in that position, they're not going to be able to sell them on. So does it decrease the value of the squad for the benefit of a couple short-term results? So if there is the right player who comes in with experience, and Rangers obviously thought this a little bit in regards to moving for Robin Proper, it can't be a squad totally of young players. But I do think you've got to think long-term with this strategy, because it's been a long-term problem, and you're not going to get out of it by continually putting money in for 37-year-old, 36-year-old players who not only aren't going to be here long term, but don't give you sell-on value. And that's a really important thing about the makeup of a squad. The one Rangers had this time last year, they had such little sell-on value, because players like Lundstrom or Barisic, while they were regarded as individuals who could make an impact in the short term, they weren't going to be sold for money down the line.
Yeah, I'm conscious there's lots of comments coming in. I wanted to touch on some of the talking points from the second part of Philip Clement's press conference, which was released yesterday at 7 p.m. He talked about Hamza Igamane and whether he could be sold this month. He said, I think it's important now, if we want consistency, that we're not going to sell players who are performing well. Otherwise, it becomes even more difficult. And about the prospect of an improved contract, he says, those are things to discuss inside the club. That's a good thing now. There's a lot of clarity after this period of 6 months where there was a big vacuum, and I was the only spokesman in the club about things. So there's clarity that this is something for Patrick and Niels to talk about contracts. Of course, I am involved in those things, and we discuss everything, but it will be on their plate to discuss with you guys about it. And pressed on when Patrick Stewart will speak, says it's not going to take more than 1 week, that's for sure. What should we expect from Patrick Stewart, Joshua?
Yeah, well, firstly, Igamane's he did sign a 5-year deal. Now, you could still improve the terms on that contract, I'm sure. And I'm sure if you're the player's agent, you're looking at his impact on the team just now, and you're thinking that, that's he's maybe made a quicker impact than anyone expected. But I think Rangers are in a strong position with him. What should we expect from Patrick Stewart? Firstly, I think this does show that, you remember James Bisgrove. I think he did a press conference just before what season are we in now? 24, 25? I think it was before the 23-24 season, Michael Beale's first pre-season in charge, which feels like an absolute lifetime ago. And he was presented as being more of a visible figure comparatively to the chairman. Again, I think that role has evolved now, as we've discussed before, to a point where the chairman is a non-executive role. You're not going to hear or see much from the new Rangers chairman, and the CEO will be given that kind of final say, degree of control that is taken away from the chairman previously, which has always been someone with a large financial stake in the club. John Bennett, Douglas Park, Dave King. I wouldn't expect a big 20-minute, 30-minute press conference from Patrick Stewart over the next few days. I think there will be some information that comes out, and that's probably in keeping with how certainly Clement and Stewart as well want to go about business. It's quite a common thing, I think, in European clubs, Derek, where you'll hear from the sporting director and they'll sometimes stop in the mix zone and they're responsible for transfers, or you'll hear from the CEO more consistently. And that's something that Clement would have been used to in previous jobs. The circumstance of the last year, has meant that he's kind of become the continuity figure at the club, just generally speaking about Hampden and stadium situations and financials, and situations he's not responsible for. Too. So I wouldn't expect a huge thing, but it's probably in keeping with Rangers trying to allow the manager to just focus on the football, which hasn't been the case for a long time. And listen, there is still, I think there's still a lot of big questions for Clement to answer in relation to that, in relation to away form and performance.
Oh yeah,
but I think you'd agree as well that he has had to, over the last number of months, and he said this himself publicly, take things, have things on his desk that no manager should have to really combat.
Yeah, the away form is revolting and it has to improve pronto. Whether it improves tonight, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I'm taking solace. It's Rangers are we're on. It's Thursday and Rangers are going up there, and I wonder if they just play the Europa League music when they walk out the tunnel. Yeah, I take a bit of solace in that. Interestingly, he was quizzed, the manager, on. Are you happy with what you know is going to happen just on January and transfers? He says that is a difficult question. So every manager wants more, but I'm realistic. So what is possible for the club? I will work really hard to get the best out of that. That's for a lot of managers in the world like that. There aren't many clubs where you can get a blank checkbook to do whatever you want. It doesn't happen so much. I know what the situation of the club is. I know what the plan is. I know it is a long-term plan. I engage myself fully into that. So I'm not going to complain about it. So that is what he had to say. And on squad depth, I know that some supporters have taken issue with this. He says, does your squad lack strength and depth? He says it's something that is necessary in seasons like now with that amount of games. We had talks about that. I don't read everything, but people tell me things sometimes. There's been a lot of fuss about rotation. I explained it is a normal thing. It is not only a normal thing here. Look at the weekend. Our rivals in this city, how many players did they change from the weekend before? And they spent 30 million in the summer on players who are not all the time in the starting 11. So yes, it's an important part. We don't have the same checkbook in that way. So we have to work hard to make it better by getting talents in or to get players out of our academy even better. What do you make of that, Joshua? A few fans sort of taking issue with it. That's, I mean, bringing up Celtic again, really. The Rangers' issue isn't up against Celtic, it's beating teams in the lower end of the table that has been an issue away from home, as we just touched on.
Agree. I mean, you know as well as I that if you're going to make that type of comparison, it's probably not going to kind of make your point in Glasgow.
It's all right. No, but it's all right saying it if you're level or you're up there challenging.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. I don't know. I'll put it back to you on this. Rangers need to rotate, and you look at someone like Václav Černý towards the end of games. He's looked tired. Like there's moments I think where you watch Černý and you think he's played a lot of football. So you need to rotate. I think that where the frustration would come in is, when do you rotate? How do you rotate? And where's the consistency within it? So, for example, Kieran Dowell doesn't start for X number of games, and Ross McCausland is starting to come off the bench and be a bit more of a regular feature. He struggled with injury issues this season, but then suddenly it's Dowell in from the start and 7 changes are made at Motherwell.
Yeah.
Or Raskin and Danilo are making a big impact in the team, and both of them are taken out for the trip to St Mirren, and then you play a back-to-back team 3 days after the next from Celtic and Hibs. Now, maybe that's just with a lot of foresight. I don't think the majority of people have an issue with players being tired or freshness, but it's probably, as you say, how that's been done, because Rangers have taken 2 points from a possible 9 against Hibs, St Mirren and Motherwell in those away games. I know they started the strongest team against Hibs, but do you take my point? It's maybe how you communicate the rotation, but also there needs to be a bit of consistency seen in what you're doing with the team selection. And I think, to be fair, that's something that people have. Clement's teams have routinely been hard to predict throughout his whole time at the club, haven't they?
Very much so. I very, very rarely get a team right. You almost get the Old Firm team bang on with your left field red fan at right back. But I think there was one player you never had in the team. But
who was it? Was it
Danilo? I think. Did you have Danilo instead of Bayrami? Or I can't remember.
Yeah, I did, and that was actually a stupid shout as well, because I was annoyed with myself for that. Because these predicted teams, you're like, am I actually predicting the team, or am I predicting what team I want?
Yeah.
But on the topic of squad depth, Clement did say that Bailey Rice is now effectively making his full step up to the first team squad. That's a type of thing where when you're talking about should Rangers plug the gap short term in relation to something like the number 6 position, no, you've got someone there who's really highly rated. You've got in Bailey Rice, you've got Nico Raskin, who would cost, I think, a fair amount of money in an open market, and has showed you how good he can be in big games. And you've got Connor Barron, who can cover there. If you sign a 30-year-old defensive midfielder in that position, Derek, what does that do to the 3 players behind it, and how does that solve the issue that Clement's talking about in relation to? And now they've not, but I'm just using that position as an example. For where Rangers' season is, there is more value to playing players like Bailey Rice and getting a short-term extra central midfielder in, as Rangers are obviously doing.
Yeah. Yep. As Thomas and Joshua said, the manager did touch on both Bailey Rice and Clinton Enciala about their progression on Bailey Rice. He says that he is going to be promoted after the game against Dundee. He'll be in the first team dressing room. That is a plan. Things to be discussed this week about the squad in which people make the next step up in their evolution in the club. So he will be more part of that first team setup, which I think is good news with regards to him and progressing in his Rangers career. I think there's certainly been a clamour for him to get more game time, and hopefully this will be the start of that. Let's move on to tonight then, Joshua, because it's a match that I think some supporters, including me, are slightly anxious about, given as we touched on, the away record. Dana Life says, what's your team for tonight, lads? You've got your team, which we'll fire up. This is your team that you would start at Dens Park. Now, bearing in mind, no Nico Raskin, no Dujon Sterling available, so Rangers certainly down to the bare bones defensively, at least. So you've got Connor Barron coming in. I think that's the obvious choice for Nico Raskin, and Leon King starting at right centre half in place of Dujon Sterling. Got to say, looking at that team, I would probably go with that as well. On the issue of the right back situation, Joshua, do you think it'd be wise for Rangers to try and bring in reinforcements this month there, given that Redfan looks like, well, who knows if he'll play there tonight, but it's probably likely given that lack of options.
Yeah, potentially, because there's not an obvious player ready to make the step up there. Obviously, Tavernier isn't a long-term issue, and obviously the knock-on effect if Rangers invest in some sort of central midfielder, a central defender, which I think is unnecessary. I know that Clinton Enciala, who Clement also spoke about, was on the bench. He is someone who's not played any first-team football at all in his career at AC Milan, so I think he's slightly behind someone like Bailey Rice, who made his debut a couple of seasons ago, but he's obviously on the bench and could feature. Even still, I think you need cover in that area because of the number of injuries, because of Leon Balogun's injury history, etc., etc. But the knock-on effect then is that Dujon Sterling would be able to play right back more. Presuming Sterling doesn't make it tonight, that's the team I'm not saying it's a team I'd go for, it's a team I'm predicting. I think Clement will keep together that front four. I know it started the last 2 games, so maybe there'll be rotation. Could you see Oscar Cortez come in? Potentially. I just think you're better rotating in a home game against St Johnstone at the weekend, where you're going to have more control of the game anyway. There's a case that Danilo should play again instead of Nadim Barami, because I think the reason that front four did well against Hibs, part of it was there was quite a lot of space to play into. Danilo is maybe someone that against a low block is better at linking up with Cherney and finding pockets of space. But Barami also wasn't at a run of games in his favoured position, had a good assist at the weekend. So that's just what I am predicting. And again, then maybe Danilo comes in for the home game against St Johnstone. I can see you've got a burning point to make. Yeah,
if you're the manager then, Josh, are you starting Danilo? Yeah.
Maybe, because I just think that Dundee will, I presume, will sit in a little bit more. Set pieces are going to be a big one to watch tonight. Rangers don't have a dominating goalkeeper in Liam Kelly, I would argue, from centre pieces.
They don't have dominating centre halves either.
Yeah, so they need to that'll come into team selection as well. You've not got a lot of height really anywhere in that team, have you? Chefty and Proper over 6 foot. Diamandi's about 6 foot. So I'd probably be inclined. The argument I was having with Johnny on Monday was that I don't think you need to. I think that when you go away in the Scottish Premiership, the whole win the battle narrative is a bit overblown. I think you need to win control of the game and not allow physicality to dominate, and not allow a team to kind of bring you to their level, as opposed to you pushing the game in your favour. Do you know what I mean? And I think a game like tonight, maybe if you start Danilo, 2 strikers, you naturally play around the opposition final third more. So I would probably, if it was up to me, be inclined to start Danilo, because I think that's, if you look at the away game that Rangers did control, it was Ross County. And the reason they controlled it is they scored a couple of goals and they put them in a strong position.
Yeah, that's the ideal. But often you'll go to these venues and it does become a bit of a physical battle, and you do need to stand up to the challenge that the opposition bring on to you. So I would like Rangers to have a bit more physicality in there. I think that is clearly obvious. I think if Leon Balogun was fit, for example, he'd be starting tonight. But he's not, so Rangers do have to go with who is available, and I've got to say I'm slightly but nervous about that back line in Dundee tonight. Just looking at it in terms of captaincy, there's been captains in that team before. Liam Kelly's been a captain, Robin Propper's been a captain, Yanis Hadji's been a captain. I'm not too sure if any of the others have been captains. Who are you giving it to tonight, Joshua?
Ooh, I hadn't thought of that. Liam Kelly and Robin Propper are the 2 most experienced players, but the fact that Raskin was given it ahead of Propper suggests that it doesn't necessarily fall to one of them. Could it be Hadji? That would be people would love it. It'd be a good PR move.
Would not be opposed to that. I think we'd revel with that, with the armband on him.
There you go. Good PR move. Okay, that's my left field shout. Yeah. I don't know. And and could it be Propper and Kelly? Also haven't been at the club long. Kelly obviously, well, Kelly has in the past, so he'd probably go ahead of Propper in that role. But yeah. The wise PR move would be Hadji, Derek, I think, because, and what does a captain actually matter? I mean, players are going to lead anyway. Johnny would tell me that it's the most important thing in the world. Yeah, I don't really care.
Yeah, there's lots of shouts for a number of players. Hadji certainly getting a lot of support there. Thomas says Kelly may captain or Propper. There's some candidates, of course, tonight for the match. But as we mentioned earlier on, we'll have all the usual coverage from Dens Park. Chris heading up to the game for us. So we'll have your pre-match show when the teams drop, and we'll also have your full-time reaction as well. How do you see it going tonight, Joshua? I can't see it being a scintillating performance, I've got to say. I'm just thinking conditions, Rangers away record, how Dundee will face up. I think it's going to be a bit of a slog.
Yeah, set pieces too, given that Rangers have just conceded 2 of them. Do you know, I think that having watched the Hibs game back, and Adam and I did a long tactics podcast about this, I actually thought that there was a difference in how Rangers ended the first half compared to how they started the second half. And they were better at the start of the second half. I think you saw them try and cut the ball back more, rather than shooting from range all the time, and kind of taking off the pressure on the opposition defence, because then the ball goes out of play, you lose the territory. I thought they were better at the start of the second half, and Clement said that yesterday in his press conference. He said against Motherwell in the final 20 minutes, Rangers were effectively too direct, and that didn't allow them to build pressure. So I thought they were better at that against Hibs, and that's kind of my point with away games. Will physicality and set pieces and all these things matter tonight? Yes. But if Rangers play as they can, and I'm saying as they can because we've not seen them do it much domestically, then they should be able to win the game. How do you do that? You control it. You treat it as much of as a home game as you can. So I don't know how it's going to go, but I do think that there was an element of misfortune in the Hibs game because they started that second half better. But generally, I think they lost more control when the game slowed down, when they had more possession, as we discussed on the show on Monday. So be interested to see how much their approach deviates from it, because they've only won, 3 away games by January, which is just kind of so far off where they need to be. And that's the big issue. If you look at their home form, it's fine. We know they can win in big games. We know they can do it in one-off games. They've got the monkey off their back with the Old Firm. But away games have just been... not a great watch. What do you think? I don't sense optimism.
It's cost Rangers a shot at the title the way form.
Yeah, it has.
There's
Yeah.
no two ways about it. The home form is fantastic. What you expect from a Rangers team, away form is just totally abysmal. And yeah, he has to get it right, or else he won't be, for me, a Rangers manager for a long term. If he cannot beat teams away from home, that is of no use to anyone. But CDM 55 certainly confident tonight. Says 7-0 Rangers, no messing. It is Thursday after all, so yeah, let's hope you're right. If you're right, if it is 7-0, we'll get you on the show, buddy. But it's yeah, I'll take any sort of win right now. Of course, 8 o'clock kickoff tonight, so a bit of a later one, folks. And if you are heading up there, as I mentioned, just make sure you've got the layers on, because it's going to be a bitterly cold evening. Right, big thank you to Joshua as ever, and big thank you to you all for tuning in to the show. Just a reminder, if we've got thousands of you tuning in to the morning briefing. If you're not a subscriber, hit that subscribe button and then hit the notification bell as well. You'll never miss a video when we go live. And there's lots of other shows on the channel other than the morning briefing. So yeah, thank you again for tuning in, and we'll speak to you a little later on. Bye for now.